My administration is acting with unprecedented speed to fix the disasters we've inherited from a totally inept group of people, to abolish all discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. And Jamie and everybody, I hope you're going to open your banks to conservatives, because what you're doing is wrong.
In this video today, President Trump stuns the World Economic Forum. He calls out the global elites to their faces. Also, breaking news, Pete Hegseth Nomination might be in trouble. So let's start with the most important issue to all of us is Trump speaking about the cost of living and what he plans to do about it.
On day one, I signed an executive order directing every member of my cabinet to marshal all powers at their disposal to defeat inflation and reduce the cost of daily life. I imposed a federal hiring freeze, a federal regulation freeze, a foreign aid freeze, and I created the new Department of Government Efficiency. I terminated the ridiculous and incredibly wasteful Green New Deal. I call it the Green New Scam. Withdrew from the one-sided Paris Climate Accord and ended the insane and costly electric vehicle mandate. We're going to let people buy the car they want to buy. I declared a national energy emergency, and that's so important, national energy emergency, to unlock the liquid gold under our feet and pave the way for rapid approvals of new energy infrastructure. The United States has the largest amount of oil and gas of any country on earth, and we're going to use it. Not only will this reduce the cost of virtually all goods and services, it'll make the United States a manufacturing superpower and the world capital of artificial intelligence and crypto.
Now, the WEF stands for World Economic Forum. This is an annual meeting where global leaders come together and they speak about, obviously, challenges, not just business, economically, even this whole climate change thing. They also speak about that as well. So obviously Trump coming in and speaking the way that he is a shock because they never got this from Biden. Biden is slow as a snail. He definitely didn't have the energy. And so they're dealing with this whole new wave of doing things differently with America. And on one hand, they have to appreciate it, even though they probably disagree with Trump on 99% of the things that he says. They have to at least appreciate how he shows up and how he's so energetic and his enthusiasm about America. Now, he calls these people out to their face repeatedly. Let me show you an example of that, where he calls out the Bank of America for not servicing conservatives.
And by the way, speaking of you, and you've done a fantastic job, but I hope you start opening your bank to conservatives, because many conservatives complain that the banks are not allowing them to do business within the bank, and that included a place called Bank of America. They don't take conservative business. And I don't know if the regulators mandated that because of Biden or what, but you and Jamie and everybody, I hope you're going to open your banks to conservatives, because what you're doing is wrong. In addition, I'm pleased to report that America is also a free nation once again. On day one, I signed an executive order to stop all government censorship. No longer will our government label the speech of our own citizens as misinformation or disinformation, which are the favorite words of censors and those who wish to stop the free exchange of ideas and, frankly, progress. We have saved free speech in America, and we've saved it strongly. With another historic executive order this week, I also ended the weaponization of law enforcement against the American people and, frankly, against politicians, and restored the fair, equal, and impartial rule of law.
Now, as soon as he made that statement, they had no response. They actually just moved to the next question. But this actually motivated me to really look into this, because this hasn't been on the radar recently. And I found that the Attorney General of Virginia and 14 other states demanded Bank of America to provide a written report about its account policies and practices because of this. Quote, Bank of America's blatant discrimination against account holders whose political and religious ideologies don't align with its own is appalling and un-American. As Attorney General, I will protect the constitutional liberties of all Virginians, said the Attorney General of Virginia. He also went on to say that Bank of America should clean up its act or prepare to reckon with potential litigation. And according to the letter, Bank of America has consistently discriminated against groups for political and religious reasons. The nation's second largest bank has denied services to gun manufacturers, fossil fuel producers, and contractors for ICE. It also canceled the accounts of Christian ministry groups, saying one such group that trains pastors is, quote, operating a business type we have chosen not to service. And it also goes on to say this: outrageously, the nation's second largest bank also voluntarily cooperated with the FBI and U.S. Treasury to profile conservative and religious Americans as potential domestic terrorists. So clearly, there's meat on the bone as it pertains to this issue, and it takes some balls for Trump to go there. He's not even physically there. Obviously, he's doing this virtually. To actually go there and call them out to their face in front of everyone. I think that says a lot. All right, so let's not forget, if you are getting value from this video, do us a favor, like, share, and subscribe to our channel. If you want to support us further, go to the link in the description below. You could shop our merch store, or you can buy us a cup of coffee. Now, we're going to circle back to what Trump had to say at the World Economic Forum. Here he is talking about tax cuts.
I got it down to 21%. And now we're going to bring it down from 21 to 15% if, there's a big if you make your product in the U.S. So we're going to have the lowest, just about the lowest rate. It'll be, the 21 is on the low side worldwide. The 15 is about as low as it gets. And by far the lowest of a large country, a large, rich, powerful country, by far, not even a contest. So we're going to bring it down to 15% if you make your product in the USA. So that's going to create a tremendous buzz. We're also probably going back to the 1 year deduction where we deduct, we did that originally, and that was amazing what the impact that had, the 1 year deduction, which built up over a period of time, and then it expires. But we're going to go back to that when we do the renewal of the Trump tax plan. We have to get Democrats to approve it. But, if the Democrats didn't approve it, I don't know how they can survive with about a 45% tax increase, because that's what it would be.
Now, everything that he's saying right there is actually good for the working class, because when you lower tax rates for companies, that frees up what? Extra profits. So they're more likely to reinvest or more likely to expand. When you raise the taxes, now they got to be very strategic with hiring and all these other things in business. Now, Democrats won't see it that way. They're going to say, well, you're giving tax cuts to the billionaires. That's half true. He's giving tax cuts to billionaires all the way down to someone who's only making $50,000 a year. But they're never going to tell the full story. Now, since we're talking about the tax cuts, if you are an individual that is dealing with some type of tax debt, or you want to get the most from your return when it comes to taxes, the sponsor of today's video, Titan Equity Solutions, it might be the best option for you, because we're talking about a premier tax relief firm. They negotiated millions of dollars in tax relief. Their services definitely include penalty forgiveness, hardship programs, or just simply filing your taxes. So even if you are behind, or if you're not, but you want to maximize your return and make sure you're compliant with taxes, because we know the IRS is insane, schedule a complimentary consultation call with my friends at Titan Equity Solutions by going to TitanEquityCorp.com/Devori, or just hitting the link in the description below. Now, his entire speech, one has to realize this is him putting not just the world on notice, but he knows people in America are watching. So he's going through everything and letting people know where he stands and what his administration is going to be all about. And one of the key things that is really triggering people on the left is about getting rid of these DEI policies that we know actually turned into discrimination policies, right? Here he is bringing that up.
My administration has taken action to abolish all discriminatory diversity, equity, and inclusion nonsense. And these are policies that were absolute nonsense throughout the government and the private sector. With the recent yet somewhat unexpected great Supreme Court decision just made, America will once again become a merit-based country. You have to hear that word, merit-based country. And I've made it official, an official policy of the United States, that there are only two genders, male and female. And we will have no men participating in women's sports, and transgender operations, which became the rage, will occur very rarely.
So merit-based country. Now, what liberals hear is that people who are LGBTQ, people of color, black people specifically, are now going to be targeted and they're going to lose their jobs. And this is going to be going back to civil rights time, right? That's what they are insinuating. I'm going to show you guys a couple of clips as an example of this. Here is Alfonso David on CNN. And this guy's a race hustler, just like all of them, claiming how much damage these type of executive orders from Trump will do. Watch.
What do you think are going to be the consequences for the American people as a result of all of this?
There are significant consequences to the executive order that's been issued. First, I think we have to remember the thousands of people that work in the federal government who are now going to be displaced. These are folks who are well trained to address issues within their agencies and within larger society, really thinking about how do we diversify the workforce. We have to be mindful that the narrative that we're seeing coming out of the Trump administration effectively says that every black and brown person is a DEI hire, which means unqualified, right? And that is a very dangerous message to send. We saw this with Ketanji Brown Jackson, the U.S. Supreme Court Justice. We saw this with Vice President Harris, where we are seeing this in so many different sectors where women of color, people of color generally, are being classified as unqualified, even though they are immensely qualified.
Okay, so he's actually conflating two issues. Number one, are these individuals qualified? A Kamala Harris, a Ketanji Brown Jackson. Now, on paper, they are qualified. There's no question about that. But when you stack them against other candidates, that would take us to the second issue on merit. Are they the best candidate? And obviously the answer would probably be no, based on what we know about those two individuals. One doesn't even know what a woman is, and the other one was in the room with Sleepy Joe Biden on every single key issue decision that he made that was disastrous for this country. So as far as I'm concerned, I don't think they were the best candidates, but that doesn't mean technically they were not qualified to actually be in consideration. That's what I'm saying. I think he's just conflating both of those issues. And here's the other thing. Blame Joe Biden and the Democrats for coining people DEI. He came out and said, I'm going to hire a woman vice president. I'm going to put a black woman on the Supreme Court. He put the spotlight on DEI and turned it into the gender and the race conversation.
I happen to be Hispanic, and I became the Lieutenant Governor of California, and I want to believe that happened because of my hard work, my dedication, being disciplined, and
your good looks.
I don't know about the good looks, but I can tell you this: it's how I feel. So I think the opportunities for everybody. Now, when Alfonso talks about some people are going to get hurt, I don't see it that way. I just respectfully disagree with you. I think that if they are hard workers and they're disciplined and they're very, very brilliantly smart, they're going to get the job. They're going to stay in that job.
Now, a lot of Democrats will look at him and call him naive for what he just said. They don't look at it as, oh, if you just work hard, you're going to be successful. Now, clearly, that's a violation of history, meaning success principles. We all know hard work, determination, discipline, not being a victim is always the reason why people succeed, not due to handouts. But they've gotten away from that principle, and it's all about participation, trying to cater to people who they believe to be victims and less than and oppressed by the system. Now, I'm going to give you guys a great example of this. Listen to Alfonso's reaction to what he just said. This is how toxic their mindset is around this issue.
This conversation actually highlights what I think is so dangerous, right? What you're suggesting is that merit and minority applicants are mutually exclusive. That's what you're suggesting. You're saying that if I'm a minority candidate, that means I am actually unqualified, right?
No, I don't think he is at all. I don't think he is at all. I'm not going to listen to you say that.
Let's look at the facts. Let's look at the facts. Why is it the majority of people who run Fortune 500 companies are white men?
There you go. I mean, it just.
No, why is that?
Why is it?
I mean,
Why do we only have 2 black women that are running Fortune 500 companies? Are you telling me?
We got to work harder.
No.
Why is Donald Trump
not the
only
right
appoint
answer.
one black person to his cabinet?
You can't tell me that we have to work
You're
harder.
saying that black, brown people, women are not working hard enough, and that's why they're not in.
Absolutely not. I'm saying
You
that
just
we're
said
qualified
they
just
work
like
harder.
I'm an
Why
American.
is it
I'm
that
proud of
we
my
only have
heritage.
2 black women that are running Fortune 500 companies? Answer that question for me.
Well,
I can absolutely answer that question, but it might sting a little bit for a lot of people out there, especially the black community. It's black culture is why you don't see a lot of black people in Fortune 500 companies. Why do I say that? Well, Asian community, Indian community, a successful metric for them, doctor, lawyer, engineer, architect. In the black community, successful metric is what? NBA, NFL, rap, and hip hop. Just think about that for a second. Secondly, toxic DEI policies also has a lot to do with this. When you start to discriminate against other ethnic groups like white people or even Asian people at Harvard, by the way, in the name of DEI practices, you end up doing more damage than what you intended. It actually has the opposite effect. And that's why I believe the federal government will never be the solution as it pertains to this particular issue. It's going to have to come from the community. And if there's one place we can always look to see merit-based being successful, just look at the military. Now let's listen to Trump call these people out once again over these disastrous policies. Check this out.
My administration is acting with unprecedented speed to fix the disasters we've inherited from a totally inept group of people and to solve every single crisis facing our country. This begins with confronting the economic chaos caused by the failed policies of the last administration. Over the past 4 years, our government racked up $8 trillion in wasteful deficit spending and inflicted nation-wrecking energy restrictions, crippling regulations, and hidden taxes like never before.
And that's why him establishing the Department of Government Efficiency is so key here. Also establishing the External Revenue Service, which is responsible for collecting tariffs. I mean, he's thinking outside the box. And of course, there's going to be a lot of people who criticize him as it pertains to the policy ideas. But what they can't criticize him on is making a significant effort in trying to change the things that have been working against America's interests. And when I say America's interests, I'm talking about people like you and me, the working class. Now, this takes us to the next story because it seems that there are 3 Republicans who are working against Pete Hegseth and are voting no on his nomination as Secretary of Defense. Let's hear Fox News break this story.
Just moments ago, Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski announced on X that she will not be supporting Pete Hegseth for this confirmation vote that is scheduled for, we believe it will happen tomorrow late in the day sometime. She says this, she put out a really lengthy statement. And she says that his past behaviors, including infidelity on multiple occasions, it demonstrates a lack of judgment, she says, that is unbecoming of someone who would lead our armed forces. She also talks about how these behaviors for men and women in the uniform, they are held to a higher standard and they would be held accountable for such actions. And they deserve leaders, she says, who uphold these same standards. So she is out, Murkowski. We're also keeping a close eye on Senators Mitch McConnell and Susan Collins. They could also be no votes, and that would mean that Vice President JD Vance would have to come down here to Capitol Hill and break a tie. Again, that is if 3 Republicans wind up voting no on Pete Hegseth.
Now, I actually want to circle back on her last paragraph here and kind of dissect it here. Above all, I believe the character is the defining trait required of the Secretary of Defense. It must be prioritized without compromise. The leader of the Department of Defense must demonstrate and model the standards of behavior and character we expect of all service members. And Mr. Hegseth's nomination to the role poses significant concerns that I cannot overlook. So let me just ask this question for the Congresswoman. You overlooked that the current Secretary of Defense twice went AWOL. And technically, it is AWOL because when I was in service, if I had went missing for 1 week and did not notify my chain of command, especially if my chain of command is the president of the United States, yeah, that's AWOL. Now, the other issue about all of this is that as soon as Joe Biden was sworn in, Lloyd Austin was confirmed within 48 hours. The only person that is confirmed for Trump's cabinet is Marco Rubio. You got Ratcliffe for CIA director still waiting. Kristi Noem is still waiting. So the Democrats clearly are slow walking this. And by this Republican coming out and stating this, she's only causing more unnecessary drama here. Dan Bongino said this about the Congresswoman, by far the most embarrassing member of the Republican Senate. This woman is a disgrace to humankind, and she's a total fraud. She has no integrity and no real skills other than pulling scams to win elections she consistently loses. This is the one seat where we are almost better off with a Democrat. And Charlie Kirk said this, don't get distracted by Senator Susan Collins' news about Pete Hegseth. She's been factored into his confirmation math for weeks. He will be confirmed and become the next Secretary of Defense. Stay the course. So, of course, this is becoming a distraction on the Republican side, but let's not forget about what Democrats are saying. And so here is the nastiness about politics put on full display from Chuck Schumer when he speaks about Pete Hegseth.
Pete Hegseth is so utterly unqualified. He ranks up there with Vogt as one of the very worst nominees that could be put forward. The Defense Department, people's lives depend on it. Civilians and, of course, the men and women in the armed services. And Pete Hegseth has shown himself not only incapable of running a large organization, he often shows himself incapable of showing up, or showing up in a way where he could get anything done. He is so out of the mainstream and so unqualified for DOD that I am hopeful we will get our Republican colleagues to join us. There'll be a vote this afternoon.
In other words, what he is saying is that Pete Hegseth is not the establishment nomination that he would like to see, because he knows Pete is a disruptor. He actually does show up. And remember, this is the Democratic playbook. They accuse people of the things that they do themselves. It was Lloyd Austin who went AWOL twice. It was Lloyd Austin where we lost 13 service members when we withdrew from Afghanistan. That never happened under Pete Hegseth. So these accusations are really just a projection, and you would just think they would have learned from the election, but apparently not. And this is just the nastiness of politics, and of course, when you're talking about the media, but I find this to be interesting, what I'm about to show you here. So Axios put this up on X. New, Pete Hegseth's former sister-in-law said that his ex-wife feared for her safety. The defense secretary nominee denies the claims, but they also don't include the fact that the ex-wife also denied the claims on the record. And of course, this got the old community notes here. Readers added context they thought people might know, not included in the headline. Hegseth's ex-wife also denies the claims, which is what I just said. So they're just being nasty. And I don't think it's really going to work at the end of the day, because Republicans don't want to be a part of history of declining the nomination for Trump. I mean, that would be a disaster for them as it pertains to the midterms. So here's a question for you guys to answer in the comment section below. What do you think about Trump's speech at the World Economic Forum? Don't you enjoy the contrast between Joe Biden and Donald Trump? I mean, I know there's a lot of people that don't like Trump and probably don't agree with anything that he says and believes everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. However, I bet they appreciate the fact that they could talk to him, that he is available, he's filled with energy, and his administration is moving at a speed they haven't seen in quite some time. So let me get your direct reaction about this in the comment section below, and how excited you were about that speech. Now, Trump also shocked with an interview he did with Hannity that was released last night. And part of that interview was him ripping California Governor Gavin Newsom over and over again. So if you guys want to check out that story and what he had to say, all you have to do is click on that video, because it's coming up right now.